I'm Willie Moss. This is Copper Cactus. Today we're making this mason jar wrap. Look how beautiful this is. It's super easy, even though it looks kind of complicated. Those stitches in there, they look hard, but they're actually not bad at all. Everything is going to be linked in the description below, all the tools, materials, everything we use today, so you can make this for yourself. We have the digital file so your laser can cut this, so it's perfect every time. The first thing we want to talk about is our tools and materials. For this, we don't need a whole lot. If you're going to use traditional cutting methods, you're going to need a little bit more tools, but we're going to use the CO2 laser that you have because that's why we're doing this whole thing. Lasers and leather. And so let's dive right into our tools and materials. First thing, we're going to need a piece of leather. This is 8 to 9 ounce vegetable tanned leather. That way we can cut it with our CO2 laser. I've dyed this and saddle acted. I've prepped it for the laser so it's ready to engrave and cut. We're going to talk about all of that here in just a little bit. We'll get into the laser pretty dang soon. So the next thing you're going to need is the mason jar itself. This is a wide mouth mason jar. It's a pint sized wide mouth mason jar. You're going to need some thread. I like this. This is a waxed hand stitching thread. This is a 1 millimeter size thread. There's thicker and thinner threads, but I think for this project, a nice chunky 1 millimeter is good. You're gonna need something pretty strong because this veg tan is so thick, and we're gonna be lacing it up, pulling it together. It's going to be what holds this whole project together. So we're gonna need 1 millimeter waxed thread. And anytime you're hand stitching, you're gonna need 2 needles. For this, we're gonna use these 2 needles. Everything is going to be linked in the description below, so go ahead and check that out for links to everything. But 2 hand stitching needles. We're going to need some copper rivets and burrs. You're going to need a setter that is the same, so these are number 12 rivets and burrs, so we need a number 12 setter, so you grab that. And then you're going to need a non-metal hammer to hit it with, something nice like that to really set these rivets in there. You're going to need that. And then you're also going to need a pair of cutters, nippers. These are diagonal cutters. I really like these. They're from Klein. They have a really shallow beveled bottom right there because we want a little bit of that rivet still sticking up after we cut it. So we don't want to completely cut it flush. We want a little bit sticking up so we can dome that over. I'll show you all that here in a little bit. The next thing you need is your CO2 laser. So hopefully you have that, and you're gonna need the file, the cut file, laser cut file for this project, and that is also linked down below. Okay, so this next step, totally optional because you're not gonna see the backside, but lately I've been masking the backside, so we're gonna do that. But you don't have to do this because we're gonna do the same cleaning process anyway, and it would remove the soot from the backside. But this just makes it a little bit nicer and it goes a little bit faster to clean it. You don't have to scrub so much. So we're just gonna put, this is just some low tack masking tape. You can use painter's tape or anything you got, or you don't have to do this at all, like I said. So I just use a little vinyl decal applicator, scrape it down, and then slice this like that. Always keep a sharp knife with you. And then you can trim this off. It doesn't really matter if you trim it, but I just do so I don't waste quite so much of it, because now you can use that on a scrap piece. There you go. It's masked on the back. Here's the front. We're going to set that down in the laser. And when the laser cuts through there, you won't have as much soot on the back. Now you want to open up the file that you've downloaded in Lightburn or whatever your laser controlled software is. Position it on the leather. If you have a camera, that makes that job really easy. If you don't, then align it with the laser head in the way you normally would for other projects. You're going to want to lay that out on there, and then I set this to where it does a deep engraving for this project because we're using 8-9 ounce leather. I want to go much deeper engraving than I normally would. So we're doing more than just marking the leather. This is going to go down substantially into the leather, like a quarter of the way into the thickness of the leather. And then set up your cut settings so that you can cut this thicker material For me, this is gonna make 2 passes. I feel like that does a better job than one slow pass. It chars a little bit less. So just do some testing, grab a scrap piece, test out like you normally would, and make sure your settings are dialed in. Okay, before you take it out of the laser, take a little cloth like this, microfiber cloth, and then I just kind of get some of the excess soot off. It's a step that speeds up the whole rest of the process. You're gonna see we're gonna pull a lot of that soot off of here. With that, just makes the next step a little bit easier. Well, I didn't mean to, but I lied a little bit earlier. We're gonna need one more thing, and that is some leather balm. So now that it's out of the laser, we're going to clean it. So we don't want our project to look like this when we're done. We're gonna want to clean off this area with the leather balm. Also, the leather balm, great for all kinds of leather, all kinds of projects. We use this to clean almost everything. It cleans it and it protects it. So cleaning it isn't really its main goal in life, but that's what I use it for. It's great to clean off the soot, and it makes the leather more supple and nice. It's a win-win. The first thing we want to do is take this masking off of the back. Look how gross that is. But once we grab that and peel it, a lot of that soot ended up on the masking tape and a lot less is on the product. So that's really nice. So we want to peel all that off. There is a little bit that got past, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about it too much. We're just going to peel all of that off. And that keeps the back of your project looking nice. So we're going to take a little bit of this leather balm, and you can buy the 4-ounce little jug of this if you're not going to do a ton of projects. We go through loads of this, as you can imagine. But a little 4-ounce jug of this will go a long, long ways too. And that's what I would definitely recommend to get started. We're just going to pour that into this little tiny cup. I take a little rag. This would be a cotton rag or cloth or a little paper towel or whatever. And then just dip it in. And then we just want to kind of scrub this. And we're on the back side. And it's going to kind of smooth in the back side. So we're going to make it it's rough, you can see. And then now we've just kind of laid down all of those fibers. And we're not quite like burnishing it, but we're just kind of laying down all the fibers, getting them all to kind of stay put. That's just going to make it a little bit nicer when we go to use it and we go to turn it. It's going to soften this leather just a little bit. Always do the back side first, so we're going to do the handle too. Then the next thing we want to do is hit these edges, and we'll do the face last. So let's grab these and do the edges really quick. And we just want to try to get most of that soot off of the edge. So when you take a look at that like that, just a few swipes is all it takes, and that soot comes right off. The edge will still be pretty dark, which is nice. I like that look. If you don't like that look, you can scrub harder. You can get that edge to be nice and bright. You could come back in and dye the edge or paint the edge if you want to. That's an optional step that we're just not going to do today, but you could always do that. And the laser kind of burnishes that edge. It makes a nice, smooth, straight edge. So that's really nice. And a little bit of leather balm just helps strip away all of that soot. Okay, now onto the front. You don't want to dig into the engraving. You don't want to pull out all of the soot and all of the char from the engraving. We just want to kind of bake that in, and this leather balm is going to do that. So we're mostly going to go like over the top. We're going to scrub off the engraving off of the leather, and we've saddle-lacked this already, so it'll come off really easy. And we just want to hit the high points and brighten those back up. Bring that natural color of that leather back. And then we want to get leather balm down into the engraving without getting the rag down in the engraving. Because if we scrub too hard, it's going to lighten it up and it's all going to look the same color. We don't want that. We want it to be nice and dark where we engraved it. And we're just getting it plenty wet here, because that's going to make it nice and dark. And go at different angles. You can go in a circle, but we just aren't pushing down. We're not scrubbing hard on this at all. You can come in with like a clean rag and just buff off the top there. Just wipe off the surface, keeping that engraving as dark as we can. Okay, right here we have a final product. It's engraved, looks really nice. The laser cut the holes for us. That's going to be important later. These bigger holes are going to be for the rivets. This space that I left in the middle is for a branding iron. We could take and brand this outside with our branding irons. You can do anything you want with this. So this is going to be for a course that we've got coming up, and we are going to leave some space in there so the students can take the hot iron brands and put some brands there. Okay, we're gonna let these pieces dry for a little bit, and then we'll come back for the next step. All right, it is a new day. We let it dry completely. You don't have to let it dry that long, maybe 20, 30 minutes. But for me, that was the end of the day, and then a bunch of customers showed up, so I went and helped them. And this is where you're gonna need a little bit of thread and a pair of needles, and we're gonna hand stitch this. It's gonna actually be easy, but look like it was challenging. It's gonna look a lot more intricate than it is. It's gonna be pretty simple. Now, I'm gonna do a cross stitch here. You can do a cross stitch and have the cross stitches on the outside, and on the back side, it's gonna be parallel stitch. If you like the look of the parallel stitch better, just reverse what I'm doing and put the parallel stitches on the outside. Otherwise, it's the exact same stitch. You can use a stitch and pony like this to get started, or it's pretty easy to start by hand. These holes are laser cut, so they are going to just match up perfect, and it's gonna be really easy. So let's just dive into it and get started. You're gonna need a lot more thread than you think, so I go about half an arm's length here, like that. And if you cut your thread at a sharp angle, it's gonna be easier to get through the eye of the needle, like that. So I'll show you a little trick here. You slide this through the eye of the needle like that, and then you're gonna turn that needle around and come back through and pierce that thread, and then just leave yourself a little bit of a tail sticking out of it. So it's just pierced through one time like that. So through the eye of the needle here, and then around, and then it's pierced back through there, through the eye of the needle, and then pierce it with a little bit of tail, and then you can just pull on that tail like that until you feel it pop, and it'll click into place, and then you can slide that right up there. And now we're set, we're ready to stitch. We're gonna take our needle here and we're gonna run this through both holes, just like that. And like that. Now pull your needles until they're about even, because we wanna keep them the same all the way through. You don't want one end to be shorter than the other when we get down towards the end of this. So we're gonna take our right hand needle and go through the left hand hole. You can see why the stitch and pony makes this a little bit easier. Pull that kind of snug, and then take the right hand needle and go through the left hand hole. So the opposite of what we just did. There we go. And then we'll pull those tight, snug, like that. And now we've started. So we want that to be pretty close, and we will just keep this going as we go. So this has got to go through this, back through this other hole here where we started, this top hole, and just that's going to be the left, and the left needle, and that goes through the right hole out the front. And then you want to just make sure that you're consistent the whole way through. So we're going to do the other needle and go through the other hole there, and now they're both coming out the front like that, and we can get them kind of snug, and just make sure you keep everything lined up. Now we always want to keep the same pattern here as we go down. So we're going to do the needle that's closest to me here, and that's going to go in the far hole, next hole down, one hole down, and then pull that through, and then go do the same thing from the other side and pull that through. And there you go, we've made our first cross stitch, and just kind of make everything buttoned up there really nice. And now we're gonna go parallel, so straight across to the other side. So we pull this thread out of the way so we can get that needle in that same hole that thread's coming through, and we pull that out, and then that way. And then we take this needle and we go straight across out of that same hole that that other thread just came through. And now we have a parallel stitch on the back side, on the inside, and a cross stitch on the outside. So then we'll go down a hole and across, and we'll come that way. And then we'll go down a hole and across the other way, like that, and keep pulling those snug. Keep your bottom snugged up in there. And then as you can see, that's pulling really nicely. That's going to pull together. So you can just keep doing that. Keep the tension on it as we go through down here. We're going to work our way down to the bottom, and then I'll come back to you when we're at the bottom. But we're just going to repeat those stitches over and over and over till we get to the bottom. Okay, these stitches look good. We've held consistent tension throughout the whole project. And now we're just going to finish up these last couple stitches here. And now we just want to go over both ways. So we can pull this string out of the way and run that thread through right there, like that. And then get this one pulled out of the way. That in there. And that's looking good. And then we just want to do the same thing here. Pull nice and tight. Make sure you got nice tight tension the whole way. And then we are done. So the last thing we're going to do is snip this right there. So we want to just dig in there, give it a little snip, leave a little bit sticking out like that. And then we're going to take a lighter like that and just burn off those ends right there. Just melt them down, let it burn in, and then you can use the lighter or your finger, whatever. It is going to be pretty hot, but you'll get used to it. And then that finishes up our stitch. That's looking really good. It's nice and uniform. Everything is perfect. And now we're ready for the next step. This is where we get to whack stuff with a hammer. Let's talk about anvils really quick. Something like this is like a 10-pound anvil. You can get away with a much smaller one. If you have a vise, you can use the corner of the vise. You just need something solid to pound into to set these rivets. Okay, what we have here is a rivet and a burr. They're linked in the description with everything else. So all we got to do is take the rivet here and put that through one of these holes there, hold it from the inside, and then apply your handle like we just talked about, and then set a little burr on that. And you can kind of push it down a little bit with your fingers there so it won't go anywhere. And then we'll put the other one in there, slide that in there like so. Grab another burr, set on there, and we're going to slide this onto our anvil. And then your setter here, it has a hole and then a dome. So we want to start with the hole, and then we're just going to hold that nice and straight, give it a couple whacks. Make sure our handle is straight. Set it in there nicely. Okay, perfect. Do the same thing for the second one. Should look something like this. Now we're going to take our diagonal cutters and we're going to snip those off, and not super close to the bottom. So these have a nice little indent right there, a nice little bevel. So you can cut these and just, protect your eyes here. I just cover it. Sometimes these go flying, not always. Okay, so you should be left with a little bit like that is sticking up. That's what we want. And then you're going to take the dome end here and set that on there. Take your hammer again, like that. We're just going to round it off. You can see the difference there. One is rounded and smooth and nice, and the other one is still pointy. So we're going to take care of both of them. Now we're going to bend the handle over like that, set this last one, and then we'll be done. And just like that, we're all done. The last thing we have to do here is to just slide the mason jar in, and project is done. Now, if your mason jar doesn't fit in here nice and snug, you can add some water and then we can wet form that. But let's just try it just like it is there. Should go in fairly snugly. There you go. And it should go right up to this lip right there and then stop. So that is perfect. and it should go to where that starts to curve over slightly right there. So the glass sticks out the bottom just like that, and you've got yourself a little handle. All right, we are done. That is a good looking project, if I do say so myself. Beautiful engraving right there, beautiful stitch work. Somebody's gonna look at those details and they're gonna be impressed. And you're gonna say to yourself, that was really easy, but it looks complicated. So thank you very much. So thank you guys for watching. I'm Ole Moss. This is Copper Cactus Collective. We make handy things for handy people.